I'm Nathan, 29 years old. Up until last Saturday, I truly thought I was a good brother, the type who's always there, stays out of the way, lends a hand when necessary, and avoids causing trouble. I wasn't looking for praise, I just believed. That's how family operates. My sister Zoe and I used to have a strong bond, not to law close, but the kind of connection where she'd still send me silly memes at 1 a.m., or reach out when she needed help moving, or navigating one of Mum's typical guilt trips. So, when she got engaged last year, I didn't hesitate to offer financial assistance for a portion of the wedding. She hadn't asked, I simply volunteered. She was clearly stressed, the venue was costly, and her fiancé, Jordan, had just started a new job. I recall telling her, I'll take care of the DJ, and perhaps some of the flowers or decorations, whatever you need most. She wept on the phone, and I now suspect it wasn't from happiness, but rather pure relief. I transferred $5,000 to her that week, no strings attached. Communication dwindled after that. She became busier, which was perfectly understandable given the wedding planning, new job, and new house. I attributed her silence to stress, but gradually, small details began to seem amiss. I wasn't added to the group chat she created for the bridal party and immediate family. When I inquired, she dismissed it, saying it was mainly for the women, and laughed it off. Later, I saw I wasn't acknowledged in the family's Facebook post praising our incredible wedding support team. My name was absent, even in the comments. I didn't mention it. I didn't want to appear demanding. Perhaps it was an oversight, or simply unintentional. The rehearsal dinner arrived. I showed up punctually, gift bag in hand, dressed in the precise, business casual attire she'd specified. Her future mother-in-law greeted me with a puzzled look, asking, "You're Zoe's brother." "Oh, I didn't expect you to be here." It wasn't exactly a friendly reception, but I smiled, shrugged it off, and took a seat at the furthest end of the table, close to the exit. My name wasn't on the program when the toasts began. Jordan thanked his parents, his groomsmen, his barber, and even his college roommate from sophomore year. Zoe then acknowledged her bridesmaids and her chosen family who had genuinely supported her. I wasn't acknowledged, not a single time. I fixated on the condensation on my water glass, convincing myself it wasn't personal. I wasn't entitled to the spotlight. I was simply there to offer support. The wedding day itself was when everything fell apart. I arrived early, as per Zoe's instructions, wearing the custom charcoal suit I'd purchased specifically for the event. The venue was stunning. Grand stone arches, an expansive garden, and white chairs meticulously arranged with roses. At the main gate, a woman with a clipboard and earpiece welcomed guests. "Name?" she inquired. I gave it to her. She offered a polite smile, rummaged through a plastic bin, and presented me with a vibrant neon orange wristband. It resembled something you'd receive at a bowling alley or a questionable nightclub. I stared at it, confused. "What's this for?" I asked. She replied in a flat customer service tone, "Orange wristbands are for ceremony-only guests. Reception access is restricted to the internal party list." I looked at her, stunned. "I'm the bride's brother." She double-checked her clipboard. "It says here you're not on the reception list," she stated, then added, as if to lessen the impact, "But you have an excellent seat for the ceremony." I was speechless. I wondered if there'd been an error. Perhaps I missed a form or sent a late RSVP. I stepped aside and called Zoe. No answer. I texted her, "Hey, I just arrived. They gave me a wristband. Am I not allowed into the reception?" Still no reply. Attempting to remain composed, I walked towards the seating area. A few people noticed my wristband. Some gave me curious glances, while others offered awkward smiles and avoided eye contact. I saw several guests sporting purple and silver wristbands, which I presumed were for the more significant attendees. Near the altar, I observed her hairstylist chatting with Zoe's former yoga instructor, both wearing silver bands. I knew this because they were taking selfies and laughing about it. I stood there, feeling as though I'd accidentally crashed a party I wasn't invited to, my own family's celebration, no less. Then I heard a snicker. One of Zoe's bridesmaids, a tall girl named Kelsey, who had always annoyed me, walked by with a champagne flute. She spoke to someone behind her, just loud enough for me to overhear. "Those wristbands are for non-essential guests. You know, just ceremony filler." She laughed, and the guy beside her joined in. I tightened my jaw and looked away. I wasn't going to cause a scene at my sister's wedding. I told myself to breathe, get through the ceremony, and then quietly leave. But then, I spotted the gift table. It was positioned near the garden doors, already laden with elegantly wrapped presents and shiny envelopes. My envelope was easy to identify. I had splurged on a dark blue velvet one, complete with a wax seal, thinking it would be unique. Inside was the $5,000 check I'd written weeks prior, along with a small handwritten note, wishing you both joy, strength, and something loud to dance to. I'm not sure what possessed me. My legs moved before my mind fully processed the decision. I walked directly to the table, slid my envelope from the pile, and turned. A few people watched, looking confused. One woman furrowed her brow as if she wanted to speak, but held back. I held the envelope aloft and declared, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, "Good thing this wasn't essential either." Someone gasped. Then I walked. I didn't hurry. I didn't run. I simply strode straight down the aisle. I apparently wasn't important enough to attend. Past the silver and purple wristbands, past the forced smiles and uncomfortable stares. I heard someone call my name once, then louder, "Nathan, Nathan." It was Zoe. She was descending the garden steps, lifting the hem of her wedding gown, her heels clicking on the stone. She reached me just before the gate. "What are you doing?" she gasped, demanding an answer. I held up the envelope, taking back something non-essential. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "It's not what you think," she stammered. I laughed, a genuine laugh that felt foreign coming from me. "It's exactly what I think." Then she reached out and grasped my wrist, not forcefully, not pulling me back, just enough to prevent me from moving. Her hand trembled slightly. I noticed the tension in her jaw, and how her meticulously applied makeup was already creasing around her eyes. I don't believe she expected me to actually depart, especially not like this, and certainly not with the envelope. "Nathan, please," she whispered, her voice softer now, as she glanced at the murmuring guests. "You're causing a scene." I looked at her, truly seeing her. The lace of her gown shimmered in the late afternoon sun, delicate and perfect. She had always envisioned a grand wedding. Recalled how she used to cut out pictures from bridal magazines as kids, pasting them into a notebook titled Someday. A part of me had felt proud, even happy, to help make that someday a reality. Yet in that moment, standing at the precipice of her dream, I felt completely erased from the narrative, a mere footnote perhaps, or an unexplained asterisk. "I'm not making a scene," I stated, my voice steady. "I'm leaving quietly." "That's what non-essential guests do, isn't it?" She winced but maintained her grip. "It was Jordan's idea," she explained. "He said we couldn't afford a large reception for everyone, and that's why I gave you the money." I countered, holding up the envelope. "So, you could afford it." Her mouth opened, then she paused. I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt perhaps, or frustration. I couldn't tell. She lowered her voice to an almost imperceptible whisper. "He thought it would be best to only invite people who are currently central to our lives. You know, our inner circle." Her words stung more deeply than she likely intended. "Right," I said slowly. "So, that doesn't include your brother." Her grip slackened slightly. "Nathan, seriously, you're being dramatic." That word, dramatic, implied I was overreacting, that it was foolish to be hurt by being labeled ceremony filler. I pulled my wrist free from her grasp and tucked the envelope into my jacket. "I hope the hairstylist gives a good speech," I remarked. "Maybe she can thank the florist for raising you." Her jaw dropped, but no words emerged. "I gave you that money because I love you," I added, my voice softer now, "because I thought I was a part of your life story. But if I was just a wallet with a last name to you, then you're not only marrying the wrong man, you've become the wrong sister." She flinched as if struck. People were observing. I could feel their gazes, some curious, some uncomfortable, some outright delighted, anticipating the impending drama. I took one final look at her, then headed toward the parking lot. The sun was beginning to set, painting long golden shadows across the asphalt. I walked slowly, purposefully, each step feeling heavier than the last. My phone vibrated in my pocket as I reached my car. A text from Mum. "What did you just do? She's crying. Go back and apologize before you ruin her day." I stared at it, let the screen fade, and put the phone back in my pocket. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the essential guests enter the reception hall. Their faint laughter carried on the breeze. I envisioned the toasts, the dancing, the cutting of the cake. I pictured Zoe scanning the room, not seeing me, perhaps realizing too late what she had discarded. And for a moment, I did feel a pang of guilt, not for leaving, but for having believed for so long that I was fortunate to be included, when in reality, I was merely convenient. I drove away into the dusk, the unopened envelope resting on the passenger seat beside me. That night, texts continued to pour in from Mum, Jordan, and two of the bridesmaids. Some were furious, others pleading. One even attempted to frame it as a misunderstanding, claiming Zoe hadn't intended to hurt me, that I should have discussed it privately, and that I'd embarrassed the family. But the most unexpected message arrived at midnight, from Dad. Just 5 words: "You were right to leave." And at that moment, I knew I wasn't irrational. I wasn't being dramatic. I was simply done pretending I was wanted in a place where I clearly wasn't. However, the next morning brought something else entirely, something I hadn't anticipated. I woke up to more than 20 unread messages. Initially, I didn't even want to look, assuming it was more fallout, more lectures from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly eager to defend Zoe's big day as if they'd been present through the silence, the exclusions, and the small humor. That culminated in the wristband. But one name caught my eye. Uncle Ray. He's not my actual uncle. Technically, he's my dad's cousin, but everyone's always called him uncle. Growing up, he was the only adult who truly noticed when something was amiss. He's also one of the few people I've consistently trusted, quiet, observant, always watching, from the sidelines, but never interfering unless it genuinely mattered. So, when his name appeared in my notifications, I tapped it. His message was straightforward. "Can we talk? I think you should know something." That was all. No lecture, no guilt trip, just a simple invitation. I called him 20 minutes later, still groggy as the sun barely peeked over the horizon. His voice was as steady as ever, the kind that compels you to listen, even when you'd rather not. "I saw what happened yesterday," he said. "Saw you walking out with your head held high. I just wanted to tell you that you didn't imagine it. You weren't being overly sensitive. You weren't wrong." My throat tightened slightly. "Thanks," I managed. "I think I needed to hear that." "I figured," he replied. "That's why I'm calling. There's something about that money you gave Zoe. You didn't just pay for the DJ, did you?" I frowned. "No. I gave her $5,000. Told her to use it for whatever would help most." "Why?" He exhaled slowly and deliberately. "Nathan, that money didn't actually go toward the wedding." That stopped me in my tracks. "What do you mean?" "I overheard Jordan talking to one of his groomsmen," he explained. "Apparently, a few months back, Zoe used your money to help with a down payment on their new car. She didn't tell you because she assumed you wouldn't care. She said, and I quote, 'Nathan never asks questions, he just gives.'" My chest went still. My mind raced, searching for any other explanation, anything that couldn't be true. "I wish it wasn't," he said. But Jordan said it like a joke, as if he was proud of her ingenuity. I sat in stunned silence. That check had been a financial strain for me. I'd taken on additional freelance work just to afford it, cancelled my trip to Madrid, and postponed a dental surgery. But I had convinced myself it was worthwhile, believing that helping Zoe begin her married life on the right foot was more important than any personal inconveniences I encountered. "I'm sorry, kid," Uncle Ray added softly. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but after yesterday, it felt wrong to stay silent." I rubbed my temples, trying to absorb the full impact of everything, the insulting wristband, the public humiliation, and now this. They'd taken my support and secretly used it for a car. "Thanks for telling me," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "There's more," he continued after a pause. "You might want to look at Zoe's wedding registry page, not the public one, but the private link she sent to her bridal party." With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop and clicked through my emails, searching for the link. I hadn't been on the group email, but I recalled the website. A few clicks later, I was in. Felt like a second slap to the face. There was a section titled Friends and VIPs, featuring an exclusive list of additional contributions and desired gifts. At the top was a spa honeymoon upgrade fund, and next to it, my name was listed as a confirmed contributor for $5,000. I had never authorized that. I hadn't even seen it. They had publicly used my name to display a contribution I hadn't agreed to, likely to impress Jordan's family or inflate their perceived level of support. I stared at the screen for what seemed like an eternity. Then my phone vibrated again. This time, it was Zoe. She had finally decided to text, "Can we talk? I feel like yesterday got out of hand." Out of hand. That's what you say when someone spills a drink or trips over furniture. This wasn't out of hand. This was deliberate, concealed, and cruel. And I wasn't even sure I had the words to respond. Not yet. But I had questions, many of them. And the more I considered it, the more I understood that this went beyond just a wedding. It was about every instance I'd been an afterthought, a backup plan, uncredited assistance, the non-essential person. Because if they treated me this way in front of 100 people, I could only imagine what they said behind closed doors. And if Zoe believed I was finished, that I'd simply walk away and stay silent, she was mistaken. because I had one more message to deliver, and this time, I wouldn't be polite. I didn't respond to Zoe's text immediately. I needed time not just to process, but to calm down and absorb the sting of everything I'd just discovered, because it was no longer just about a wedding. It wasn't about a wristband, being excluded from a guest list, a DJ, or a spa fund. It was about how I had been gradually erased, reduced from a family member to a mere functional wallet in a suit. So, I let it sit for a few days. I didn't block her, didn't unleash a furious attack, and didn't post anything online. I simply waited, allowing the silence to do its work. And within that silence, the first cracks began to appear. By Monday, I started receiving calls from relatives. Some were bewildered, some angry, but a select few were genuinely curious. "Why didn't you stay for the reception?" one aunt whispered, as if afraid of being overheard. "We noticed you weren't in any of the photos." That's when a crucial realization hit me. Zoe hadn't revealed the full truth of what happened. She had told people I left early due to an emergency. But the actual reasons, the wristband, the exclusion, the misuse of my money, she had kept those quiet, likely because even she knew it would reflect poorly on her. That guilt she'd attempted to dismiss with a smirk and a shrug at the ceremony. It was clearly intensifying. So, I decided to respond. I took a deep breath, opened the message thread with Zoe, and typed, "Sure, let's talk, but I'd prefer to do it via email to avoid any misunderstandings." 10 minutes later, she replied with an okay, that peculiar passive-aggressive smiley she always used when pretending everything was fine, even when it clearly wasn't. So, I drafted an email to her. Nothing furious, nothing over the top, just the unvarnished truth. I recounted everything, how I felt receiving that wristband, the humiliation of being treated like a prop at her own wedding, and how her bridesmaids' comment about me being non-essential cut deeper than she understood. I explained that I had been proud to support her, but that she and Jordan had twisted that support into something selfish, using my money for a car and then falsely attributing a spa donation to my name. I told her I felt exploited, and more than that, I felt disposable. I concluded with this: "I love you, Zoe, but I believe you've confused quiet loyalty with indifference. I'm not indifferent. I simply gave you the benefit of the doubt too many times. You crossed a boundary, not with the wristband, the reception, or the money, but with the assumption that I wouldn't care, that I wouldn't notice, that I didn't matter. I don't wish to quarrel with you, but I also refuse to pretend this didn't occur." I hit send and waited. 3 hours later, she responded. Her message was lengthy, filled with paragraphs of excuses, partial apologies, and convoluted reasoning. "We didn't think you'd mind. Jordan said we had to make tough cuts. You've always been so generous. I didn't mean to hurt you." Then came the truly infuriating part. "Honestly, I feel like you're blowing this out of proportion. If you had just stayed and talked to me afterward, this could have been resolved privately. But now you've turned this into a huge issue." That was the moment I realized she hadn't genuinely changed. So, I composed one final reply. "No, Zoe, I didn't make this a big deal. You did, when you allowed a stranger into your reception over your own brother. When you used my money for a car, then falsely claimed I funded a honeymoon upgrade. I knew nothing about. You're simply upset that someone finally called you out. I will no longer be a part of this pattern. I truly wish you a happy marriage, but don't expect me to continue playing the role you've assigned to me." I haven't heard from her since. What followed was quite telling. A few cousins contacted me privately. Some mentioned noticing my absence from the wedding photos and inquired about what happened. I told them the truth, without exaggeration. There was no need. The story spoke for itself, and word gradually began to circulate. Jordan's parents discovered the truth next. Apparently, they had been under the impression that they had covered the DJ and other wedding expenses. When they learned about my contribution and how it had actually been utilized, tensions escalated. I wasn't present for that confrontation, but Uncle Ray later informed me that Zoe and Jordan faced a significant reckoning with their in-laws regarding financial transparency. Regarding the $5,000, I cancelled the check. It hadn't been cashed yet. I contacted the bank, explained the circumstances, and voided the payment. Then I sent Zoe one last message. "I've cancelled the check. Consider this my boundary, not a punishment. I will no longer finance your silence." A week later, a manila envelope arrived in the mail. There was no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakably Zoe's. Inside were a handwritten letter and a photocopy of a $5,000 check made out to me. The letter was brief. "You made your point loud and clear. I don't agree with everything you said, but I understand now. I'm sorry. This is what you're owed. I didn't deposit the check. I no longer needed the money. I had already received what I truly required, not financially, but emotionally, closure, clarity, and a clean break. I keep the check in my desk drawer, not out of resentment, but as a reminder that sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about those who see you, include you, and respect you. And if they don't, you have every right to walk away, envelope in hand, with your dignity preserved. And no, I don't anticipate an invitation to the baby shower. But for the first time, I am perfectly fine with that, because I've finally stopped appearing where I'm not wanted. And let me tell you, freedom feels far better than any forgiveness.